Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zach and Matt Show. I'm your host, Matt, and today we are joined by the one and only Heidi Briones as well as Tully Baker to talk about their new project, their new organization that they are starting and are just getting ready to launch, Math Movement. Heidi and Tully, first of all, how are you guys? It's been a while since both of you have been on the channel, and we're glad to have both of you back.
Doing good.
Doing great. Doing
fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always good to see you.
Thanks for having
me. Glad to be back.
You guys as well. And so tell us, what is Math Movement? For those that have never heard about it, what is the goal of Math Movement? What are you guys doing with your new project that you started?
Absolutely. So Math Movement is an organization that Heidi and I and a number of Yang Gang around the country have worked together to get started so that we could keep the momentum of our movement. And particularly, we're focused on the grassroots, on building the grassroots strength that is needed to get the policies and the results that we want.
Mm-hmm. And
to be said if Heidi wants to add anything, but go ahead.
So that's definitely great. It's definitely a great start. We're actually a 501c4, with a board that has oversight over our actions. So we are actually, an official nonprofit with all the bells and whistles and the legal, X's and O's checked, that luckily somebody other than myself got to do. But that's definitely one part of it. I mean, essentially, I see it as an extension of what we built together as the Yang Gang to push the universal basic income movement forward through Andrew Yang's campaign and what down ballot candidates have been doing since then, such as myself, and basically focusing on continuing that momentum, like Tully mentioned, but also making it fun, keeping it exciting, making it something that people want to be a part of, and that's not a typical drag, because we all know that when we were involved in the Yang campaign, it was fun. I mean, we liked telling people about it. We liked wearing our merch. We loved going to the rallies. It was exciting. We were pumped. It wasn't like a typical political experience for so many, and it brought in so many different people. And that's the kind of energy that we want to continue and that we will continue. We do have to build it. It's going to take work. It's not going to be easy to keep that kind of thing going, but that's the plan.
So basically, you want to this organization, like the goal almost to me, it seems from what I'm hearing so far, is you want to almost be able to create something that's able to replicate the energy that the Yang Gang had during the presidential campaign, but even in the non-presidential years.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think one way to think about it is like when you get to the end of the season. All right, we did pretty well, right? We made it to the playoffs, okay? But we didn't make it all the way. And then after the playoffs are over, you don't just like sit around and wait for 4 years. You got to hit the gym, man. You got to start getting ready and building the strength. And that takes work. It takes a lot of work. It takes focus, discipline, and it takes time. So we want to start right away, which is why we're launching our first major project almost immediely after the 2020 election, because we want to get right to work after it's over.
Yeah. So what is like the type of projects that Math Movement would be doing? Because one of the things I think, like when people hear about these new organizations, is trying to like imagine or get a picture in their head of what it actually is. Because like they might understand like, okay, there's this group, they have a board, they're doing stuff, but I'm not actually sure like what they're doing, if that makes sense. Would you be able to elaborate on that part of it more?
Sure. Heidi, do you want to try answering this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we foresee us doing a lot of different things, but if you look over the course of political organizing, movements, activism, you can see that there is a grassroots infrastructure that's created in order to push forward policies at different levels. So you can look to movements that currently exist if you want, like Sunrise Movement, who was able to push Green New Deal to be a mainstream actual policy that was pushed and passed, and that people now have to subscribe to pretty much, in a section of the left to be considered viable. It's like, that's the type of grassroots power that something like the Sunrise Movement had. So how you do that is you have to, first of all, educate and, train people on how to organize. And the Yang Gang is highly talented, but to be perfectly honest, a lot of us were more new to political organizing. We're really good at certain things. We're great at social media, great at digital marketing, great at, media promotion, all of these things that we're excellent at. But a lot of us were a little bit new to this game. So we hope that one project is education, that we're starting with math class as the first thing that we're launching, to give everybody that baseline of activism, organization, so that they know. I'm sorry?
Can I add a note to that?
Oh, please. Yeah.
We do want y'all to know that with math class, we're actually partnering directly with Humanity Forward. They've given it their full blessing. They think it's a really important project to move our movement forward. And this is really going to close a gap for us, as Heidi was saying. A lot of the folks who sort of had previous experience with organizing or activism of any kind were sort of more Bernie aligned. And as a result of that, the Yang Gang was a lot of folks who didn't have much experience in this area. And we talk so much about organizing, which sometimes gets a bad rap, but it's supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be effective. And to do it effectively, it really helps to have a little bit of that like baseline know-how from people who have experience with organizing, such as Heidi, who ran her campaign. I think you can see behind her there, she ran for Congress and she had to do a lot of organizing. And like myself, I've been organizing for about 10 years now, almost exactly 10 years. And that know-how is going to propel our movement a ton. And we're going to train many of the leaders of the future. And we've got some help from Humanity Forward with that. So we're stoked.
It's good to know, especially that Humanity Forward's partnering with you guys on a grassroots effort. I think that's something that people want to see. And also, Heidi, it's interesting that you bring up the Sunrise Movement, because the Sunrise Movement was very instrumental in helping Jamal Bowman up in New York in June get over the hill against that Elliot Engel corporate incumbent or Democrat that had been a force in the party and in New York for decades. And literally the Sunrise Movement is just a bunch of kids, and they call voters all day. They're super passionate about climate change. We're super passionate about math. So I'm making the connections here. I wonder why we can't say the same thing. And that brings me to my next question is like, what do you like separating it from like the 2020 campaign? Because you said it yourself, like we were new, we were amateurs. Now we're starting to get a little more experience under our belt. What does a successful movement look like in say the next like year and a half, like say between the 2022 election and the 2022 midterms, from your guys' perspective?
Sure. If I could, there's actually something that you mentioned that I want to respond to before I come back to this, which is you mentioned the Sunrise Movement helped a candidate in, was it New York? Narrowly edge out an opponent. And that's one of the things that we want to help a lot with. And we've been working quietly in the background on putting together this team called T Cubed, the tide turning team, which is going to be able to have like a burst of phone banking activity whenever there's a close race. And we want to grow T Cubed's team as large as we can. I want y'all to imagine hundreds, potentially even thousands of sort of well-trained, but also engaged and excited volunteers who are a part of this, movement, who are like, believe in it and are enjoying like the day-to-day process of being involved. Imagine being able to like flip a switch and be like, oh, we're down by 2% over here. We can get this this candidate to win. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, Tully, because I mean that really is just like a fascinating idea to think about, because like even during the peak like of Andrew Yang's campaign on those final few days, we would only have maybe like 100 or so people on the dialer, which is a lot. But it like that's at the peak right before Iowa. So for a congressional candidate that's at such a smaller scale, just one district, to have just 100 or even just 50 people who would be willing to say, oh, I just got an alert, like some rapid alert thingy, and boom, our phone banking, everyone gets together. That would be such a tremendous asset. But I want to give you a chance to talk about also just the original question, which was, what does the movement look like, a successful movement look like over the next 2 years?
Yeah. So Heidi, I imagine we'll do a little bit of like tag team with the answer. But one of the things that I would bring up is I think that there needs to be a good amount of local focus and local involvement. And I think that there needs to also be a grassroots focus. I think very often within the Yang Gang, we sort of think of things in terms of changing the right minds somewhere up at the top. And that's all well and good. And I think that's a good thing to try to do. In many ways, the Bernie Sanders movement could have done a much better job of, maybe we'll call it schmoozing, okay? Like, honestly, as opposed to, in many cases, like making enemies. But let's also build the grassroots power so that, like, we don't have to ask anybody, pretty please, can we have such and such a result? We can tell them, look, this is the rule of the people. The people want X, and for that to happen, you need strength in numbers. And then for that to happen, as Heidi was talking about, you need some infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that the Sunrise Movement does well, or other movements like them, I don't want to just pick on them and talk only about them. There's a lot of other organizations doing similar.
There's Our Revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Fight for 15.
Fight for 15.
I mean,
there's Justice Democrats. That's kind of a different type of thing. There's Brand New Congress. There's all these groups doing these things, and we
need some. The bottom line, I think, is like we need some Yang Gang groups building that kind of infrastructure so that when
we need a lot of them. So it's not like, this is like, oh, there can only be one, or like, what about this other group, or what about this other group, which is a question that we may get a lot. But it's like, that's great. Like, that's great. It took a lot of different movements to get Bernie Sanders' movement to where he did, getting that close to the nomination. I mean, that wasn't just one group that got in there. That wasn't just one group that even gets Cory Bush in, AOC. All of these people have different grassroots infrastructures that were built and then support them. So what I would like to see is, if there's an initiative that comes up, let's say there's an initiative that comes up in Salem, Oregon's about to go into a legislative year, they're part-time, or maybe it's in Sacramento where they're full-time. But there are these different things that come up, like Cal UBI, for example. If we have a chapter in Sacramento with an infrastructure set up, we already are there, and we know exactly what to do, how to get press, how to get publicity, how to have an actual movement show up there at these different places while the legislators are meeting, because it's not all about electoral politics. We can actually push the people that are currently in office to pass things like ranked choice voting, to pass democracy dollars at a state level or a local level. And these are things that'll make it so much easier for Yang and Yang aligned candidates, or whoever else comes up with policies that we want to support, to get those passed. So there's so many different things that we need to be setting up to make more things possible down the road for our movement.
One thing that I'd love to add is just that I can't recall if it was Matt or Heidi that was just mentioning how there were all these different organizations kind of on the Bernie Sanders left, if I can call it that, that all contributed in significant ways in different areas. Again, Sunrise Movement with getting, like, it's such a big deal that they got the Green New Deal, to say deal so many times, out, like on the table, and all of a sudden people are being asked questions on the presidential debate stage. So that's one huge function. And then just giving support in different races around the country, supporting different policies around the country.
Can I say one thing about that really quick?
Yeah, sure.
Just the fact that, like, they can push the Sunrise Movement and these groups. For example, the Sunrise Movement can push a candidate to be like, do you support the Green New Deal? We'll phone bank for you and crush it for you. And that's so powerful. And that's the kind of pressure that we need to be putting on these candidates. Like, do you want our movement to back you? I just wanted to make sure that we got that point in, because it's so powerful that they could call Jamal Bowman and be like, you support the Green New Deal, right? like you got to be all about this, and we got you. And that's the kind of power that we need to have, that we need to build now.
Yeah, Heidi, that's such a good point. I did the point that I was on the way to is just to say that when it comes to us and what we're looking to do, part of what we stand for at the Math Movement, and the reason we're called the Math Movement is because Andrew Yang had supporters who came to him for all different kinds of reasons. A lot of people supported the UBI, but for me personally, what I would what really pulled me in was the math. I have my hats here. I thought this was so powerful. Make America think harder, and this focus on numbers. And I know that there's other people out there like me, good-hearted nerds who want to have a math-based politics, which we define as a politics that is focused on problems and solutions by the numbers. That's what we want. That's what I am passionate about. I know there's other people who feel that way, and you could say that's part of like our focus and our dream is to make American politics more thoughtful and numbers based.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is interesting, just thinking about all these different groups and just the power that Heidi was referencing and how these kids are able to get questions asked up on a presidential debate stage. And then I also think like about figures like Greta Thunberg, the 17-year-old climate activist. And I think the lesson we learned here is that the youth activism and getting involved at politics and that energy that you don't really see in the older generations. You see it on college campuses and in cities with younger populations across the country. Like the media and the politicians, they do listen to that and they do respond to that. And that brings me, I guess, to my next question is, how do we as a movement try to activate more and more people to take that kind of leap? And like, I think about it like, right now I have 6 Yang 2020 bumper stickers on my car, still like 6 months after the campaign ended, right? But if you had told me 2 years ago that I would have had a political bumper sticker on my car, I would have told you like, oh, no way, because I was like scared to share my opinions. I thought people would like judge me, and it's like basically it's intimidating to get into this political scene, I think, for a lot of people. But I feel like if some more people tried it and could realize like if they had a warm, welcoming group of people they got along with it, what you said again at the beginning, Heidi, like it could replicate that magic maybe that we had a bit from 2020. How do we do that effectively?
We have to make it fun. I mean, we have to make it fun. It can't suck. And when I talk to
that's a good way to put it.
But I mean, it's as simple as that. But when I talked to, for example, Marianne Williamson about this exact issue, I was just like, what do we do? Like, and she told me about how it was when, she was an activist in the 60s during the civil rights movement. And that was a literal revolution in a lot of different ways. So at that point, people would live, eat, breathe politics and activism. Like that was everything to do. Like they worked for a nonprofit, like such as, a Math Movement or a Sunrise Movement or one of these. They would, hang out with other activists. They'd go to parties, festivals like Woodstock. Those types of events were political. All of the festivals, all of that stuff at that time, a grand majority of it was very political. And we've separated that out and siphoned it out at this point in society. And all of these things are deeply human. Like if we want to be humanity first, like that means, music, exercise, fun, excitement, that kind of vibe that we had at the Yang campaign where it was like humanity first, we're all in this together, that feeling. We have to make it fun. We have to bring that kind of energy through music, through activities that bring social fusion rather than division. We have to bring more people in and have a big tent, fun, atmosphere that makes people excited to do it and bring their friends and be like, it's going to be fun. Come, let's do this. And that's the kind of vibe that we hope to create. And I think that we can, based on what we saw in the campaign, bringing parts of that in and also bringing parts of our other knowledge and things that we've seen in other movements that worked really well. And a lot of them were fun. Like in the 60s, they were having a blast. Like, let's be real. They weren't like, this sucks every day. Like people wanted to go out to these things and have a good time and make some change. And we can bring that back in a really positive, effective way, I think.
I think one of the things that's going to be really key and we always talk about, we have the data. We want to be science-based. We want to be based on empirical evidence, by the numbers. And by the numbers, what the science tells us is that a huge proportion of happiness and of laughter is associated with relationships. You don't laugh that much alone, but when you're with other people, you laugh. It's a communicative thing that human beings do, right? And a great deal of our happiness comes from the relationships that we have. So making it an environment where people are encouraged to connect and have those relationships is key for it to be like fun and for people to have a kick-ass time.
Yeah. Also, like another thing that just like occurred to me now is I think too that there's almost like you see like this group of I don't know. I think of it maybe as like you're new to the Yang Gang or you're new to the idea of volunteering, at least for something that you believe in, and you kind of see like this group that's already like super active and everybody already has these friendships and relationships built, and it's kind of like, oh, am I gonna fit in there? Like, I don't know, are these people gonna like me? And I think that just goes like more to the point of like there really has to be like a very welcoming, friendly, warm environment, and that's like also the general like just sense that if you're part of the Yang Gang that you should want to feel anyway. Like we want to be that group that people get drawn towards. And I feel like we did an okay job of it during the campaign. So that's a good thing.
Not so great lately. Yeah, I know what you mean, but
but
we've all seen it. We know what you're talking about. But.
Nonetheless, I want to talk about what you mentioned earlier. It's like your premier product, like your big first project, and that's math class.
Yep.
And I've talked a little bit with you before about math class, Tully, and you actually a few months ago when you first started working on this, you called me and you gave me a lengthy preview of the whole thing. And it's basically this whole course about organizing and the history of it and why we do it and its effectiveness and how to do it effectively. And it's this, when it's finished, it's going to be this free training for volunteers, a video course. How, like, what's the rollout of that going to be like? And what type of tips will volunteer and info will be volunteers be able to get from it that maybe they wouldn't be able to get elsewhere? Like, why, I guess, what makes this course so valuable? I mean, I've seen it, so it's definitely thorough. But
absolutely, the first thing that I want to speak to is that organizing. When we talk about organizing, right? It's not the same as like cleaning up your closet or your room. Okay, when we talk about organizing, we're talking about like the domain of creating change. It is the skill set and the methodology of, thank you, now it is going to be dope, of creating change. This is how change has been created throughout history, with the civil rights movement, with the women's suffrage movement, which was only 100 years ago that women got the right to vote, and it would have been later if there weren't organizers fighting for it. Okay, so think in the future, we're trying to pull UBI and other policies closer towards us, or push us closer towards those policies. You know, organizing has always been essential to making change. And you mentioned Greta Thunberg and young people, how they're starting to get involved. This is why we place so much emphasis on trainings and why we think math class is going to be such a big deal, because within the Yang Gang, we can start to build homegrown organizing know-how, homegrown leaders that know how to do the work of building a movement. It is a skill set that is learned, and for that, it sure helps to have something like this, a video curriculum which is really accessible. Nobody wants to read something like this, and one of the aspects of it that's really particularly valuable is the fact that organizing traditionally has been an oral tradition. It is passed down from one person to another and taught person to person, and there's not much out there in the way of like guides that you can access online that can show you what this is about, how to get involved, and how you can actually take part in creating change.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I mean, this is kind of like a for us, by us type of a thing. I mean, everybody that's involved is Yang Gang with similar goals, motivations, policies that we're really excited about, knowledge bases. Like I can bring to the table how to run as a UBI candidate, those types of things that we did, how to run completely digital. During COVID-19, we learned a lot of digital skills. We have that unique opportunity within the Yang Gang where there are people that are very high tech, know about that type of thing. But also we have people that are organizers and that have been doing a lot of the work in the background as well. And we can bring those two things together and make a uniquely modern, new type of political organizing material, which frankly, a lot of the stuff that's out there is a little stuffy. It's a little old. And that's why a lot of the tactics that you see seem a little stuffy and they seem a little old and they're not as effective. So we can combine certain things that we've learned that have worked and, go from our wins to create a curriculum that's actually relevant, and present to this day. So that's how it's a lot different.
You mentioned, what are some of those things that are out of date that we as literally the data and the 21st century solutions people should have a new solution for? And before you answer, want to see more asked, when is this coming out?
The website,
your website's up right now. It's Math Movement, but it's MVMT.org, right? So mathmvmt.org. In math class, as you said, it's going to be launched November 4th or 5th, right after the election.
Of course, it's November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. That's from V for Vendetta.
Yes. I don't get the reference, but Heidi,
Matt,
what are some Heidi or Tully? What are some of those things that are outdated and we need to have new solutions for in terms of organizing and political strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a huge one right off the bat. In the last 50 years, y'all might have heard of a book called Rules for Radicals, right? And that was written by a labor organizer by the name of Saul Alinsky, okay? And Saul Alinsky really focused on sort of tactics for negotiating once you have a seat at the table, okay? So when he was writing it, it was assumed he already has the union organized, okay? So his focus was on advocacy, okay? When you are at the table with the other, the people with power, how do you most effectively convince them to adopt, let's say, UBI or whatever it might be, okay? Now, in Rules for Radicals, he was teaching people how to be an effective advocate when you already have a seat at the table, okay? And I don't think he foresaw that 50 years later, the grassroots organizing aspect that actually gets you that seat at the table with some power that you can spend, with some political capital that you can spend, that would actually die out. And it did die out from like 1960s and 70s on. We had very little in the way of mass movements. It used to be, like Heidi said, a way of life. It used to be something that was going on. So one of the things that is outdated is there is this focus on changing the right minds up here, okay? Getting your target to change their mind, as opposed to the focus where it should be, like 80% of the energy should be organizing to build that power so that we can get Andrew Yang or the figure that we support a seat at the table, and so that he can sit at the end of the table and he can say, instead of, pretty please, can we have ranked choice voting? He can say, hey, listen, do you guys want to win seats or no? If you want to win seats, you're going to need to support ranked choice voting. So that's the biggest thing that I would say is just where the focus is at. Is the focus at the tippy top versus the bottom?
Yeah. I mean, to build off of that, I do think there's a lot of digital skills coming up in this day that have not been focused on as much in activism materials until very recently. And I do think that those who master that will win 100% in the future. I actually think that the Trump campaign was very good at Facebook advertising, memes, whatever else you want to think about that. That media manipulation and getting the narrative is something that you need to be good at. And I think the Yang Gang has mastered certain aspects of it. I mean, we trend like no other.
We're good at Twitter, but
but
we got some work to do elsewhere. I think
we can expand on the things that we know and use the tool books that other people are building but not sharing. But we can reverse engineer a lot of things. So I do want there to be some digital training in there that's very poignant and on topic for what we need to do in the future.
Definitely.
One other thing, Matt, that is like, I don't know if I would call it like outdated so much as just wrong, which is that culture changes, right? Culture moves over time here and there. And one way that the culture has moved, unfortunately, in the world of like activism is towards sort of shame and guilt, trying to create change by shaming people into agreeing with you. And it doesn't work, and it makes politics feel unpleasant. This is this culture of like, cancel culture, call out culture, and just trying to guilt people into like intimidate people into seeing things your way, or at least speaking your language. It has sort of taken over a lot of the spaces, and that's something that needs to be updated. There needs to be room for people to grow, and there needs to be room for people to change their mind, and that works better when there's not judgment. So that's one major sort of soft skill that we're going to be trying to adjust with math classes, saying like, look, it needs to be fun, and it needs to be a space where people feel good, and this ain't doing it.
So speaking of fun,
yes.
Will the math class have a diploma?
Absolutely. There's going to be a certificate that you have completed math class, an official one that you can only get after you've completed it. So
this is going to be really exciting for a lot of people, guys, because a lot of people have probably gone their whole life never getting a certificate for nothing, and now they get to get the best certificate of all. A math class.
It's gonna be dope. It's gonna be fun, and there's other things that we can't fully talk about that you'll get as well. But yeah, definitely at very least you're getting a dope certificate, custom. That looks really cool. That is going to be for sure something you're gonna want to share. It's gonna be awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, if I may, real quickly, Heidi has talked a lot about fun, right? And I think one of the ways that I like to have
all about fun.
One of the ways one of the things that actually makes things fun is nerding out. Okay, nerding out, just like indulging in nerdiness and just like the right amount of cringe. Okay, and so one of the things that an idea we've played with is when you finish math class, this isn't a final decision. Y'all can let us know what you think in the comments. But we think that maybe we should give people numbers like, 007, 008 based on when they finished it. So it's an idea that we're playing with. Yep. So you can sort of brag like, I was number 17 to finish math class, something like that. Just an idea.
First in the class, in the graduating class. Who wants the bragging rights?
Absolutely.
If you're not first, you're last. Just kidding. Everybody wins. But let me ask you a question. A little more serious. One of the things I think I've seen pop up a good bit is people saying like that there seems to be like a lack of direction or perhaps leadership in the Yang Gang. Like, and Andrew's just been busy with stuff, and it's just not a presidential campaign. We don't see him every day. Which brings me to this question: how do we build like our own, I don't know, how do we create like grassroots leadership that people can trust and will actually follow? Because if personally, my opinion is like, I feel like maybe there has been a little bit of a lack of leadership, but overall, like, I feel like we have pretty clearly spelled out goals, like help congressional candidates, push for UBI, and there's a third one, I think, but I forget what it is. Ranked choice voting, some data, I don't know. So maybe they aren't that spelled out that clearly, but nonetheless, how do we build more grassroots leadership?
I have two really quick answers, and then Heidi, feel free to expand on it if you want. One is to talk about it, like within your movement, talk about organizing. I thought that it was a very good thing that Bernie Sanders' slogan was "Not me, us," and he always was talking about building a political revolution. Maybe we would play with and change the language, because revolution sometimes makes people feel kind of like nervous.
Revolution.
Matt's a great interviewer, you guys. It's a lot of fun. So talking about it is one really important thing that you can do, because that disseminates the norm throughout the space, the social space. Okay, so get on Twitter, get on wherever y'all congregate online, and talk about the fact that we need to do some grassroots organizing. And then number two, and this is maybe one way where there has been sort of a lack of leadership, which we're not pointing the finger at anybody. This is just something that's hard to do. But number two is you have to make it easy. You have to make it really, really easy for people to get involved, which is what we're trying to do with math class. In a way, it almost like holds your hand like on the way to getting involved. Makes it very easy, sort of not intimidating, makes it feel like the natural, awesome, fun thing to do. But also providing people with like a directory, for example, where they can find the place that they can get involved. That's something that needs to be done, something that I think we and others are working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people have to make it their own. I think that any movement that's, truly exciting and has any legs, unfortunately doesn't really stand on just one leader or, one personality. That can
That's
be
a cult.
That's culty. Yeah. So I think that we need to actually avoid certain pitfalls of having leadership. And I certainly don't want to be thought of as a leader of a movement that scares the hell out of me. Like, I would much rather the movement continue without me and push me out and become massive and like very effective than have me be a leader of something that's not useless, Yeah. So, what I hope is that everybody can become leaders. I hope that we create so many leaders that you don't feel like anybody is a leader. You feel like you are a leader. You feel like you are taking ownership and leading some part of this movement, and you don't feel like you have to wait for approval and sit around and feel small. I do not want anybody to feel small. Like, in a true movement and a true revolution, I feel like everybody in it is a leader in their own right, and everybody in some aspect has their own personal power back, and you feel like you can do whatever that is that you want to do, and you're supported by the movement. So I hope that we don't fall into those pitfalls, and I'll do anything I can to make sure that we don't in certain aspects.
Totally agree with Heidi.
That's a really fantastic answer.
Yeah, I totally agree that we need lots and lots of leaders. And we need people to get involved. So if you've been itching and you've wanted to get involved, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to get involved in a meaningful way where you'll actually start to be able to see your impact like right away. So you can go to our site, mathmovement.org, MATHMVMT.
Link in the description.
Yeah, in the description. And you'll see at the top, there's a link that says directory. If you go to directory, we're still actually building our directory, but there's a field there where you can sign up if you want to get involved, and if you've been itching to get involved, and you will interact directly with us, with myself and Heidi and others who have already to build the movement.
That makes it all worth it in and of itself. Like, not only do I get a fight for math, I get to hang out with Heidi and Tully.
That's an added benefit for sure.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. How do you think, I think people look at maybe the Bernie Sanders campaign, and we're talking about like the other groups that are that have sprung out of the Bernie movement and the progressive movement that are trying to bring about change. I feel like a lot of people maybe looked at like maybe the final product and felt like there were some flaws along the way, like where maybe the Bernie groups for whatever reason, didn't build quite enough alliances or enough partnerships. How do you think we can learn from maybe some of the errors that past groups had, like especially recently in this new progressive era? What can we learn from the groups who did things perhaps wrongly, and we want to do them right?
Can you give a little more example of that? Like,
Yeah, let me I'm trying to I can't really think of a specific example off my head, like besides just like talking about how like an example, I guess I don't know how much this really involves at the grassroots level, but I think it does in the sense it's a larger example of something that applies at the grassroots level. It's when Biden had Pete and Amy and Beto all come out and endorse him on the same day. I remember watching Kyle Kalinske here on YouTube, and he was saying like, man, like why couldn't Bernie have done the same thing and worked all his connections, all his people, and had all these alliances and been like, yeah, you came out with Amy, Pete, Beto. Well, here's Warren, Yang, and Tulsi. Come at me, bro. So, but for whatever reason, those political alliances and stuff didn't exist, and for that, it probably falls more at the campaign at the top. But I do feel like that situation of like, just think of it in our own situation when we were campaigning. Like, we didn't. There's a lot of even now. There's still a lot of hesitation for within some of the Yang Gang to work across with burners just because of the tension we had on the campaign in terms of not, even though our goals are largely the same in terms of not being able to get along and all the back and forths during the campaign days. So I just like, how do we avoid that as a movement? I think like where we want to, I feel like we want to be seen as like a group that's not willing to work with everyone, because you don't want to work with like just people who are terrible, but like working with people who may disagree with you a little, but overall are aligned with your goals.
Yeah. I mean,
there's one thing that, sorry, go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah. I mean, I have some thoughts. I think that, a lot of the things that actually Yang did during the campaign are good examples of it. I mean, he was willing to talk to anybody. He was willing to have conversations with, anybody on any topic, and he approached it from a very logical, data-driven perspective. And I think if you look at a lot of the issues that we want to focus on, I mean, many of them are sort of nonpartisan. I wouldn't say bipartisan. I'd almost just say nonpartisan. And I think that to build a big enough tent, I feel like you do have to focus a bit on things that appeal more broadly. And I hope that we can do that, just like Andrew was able to do, and why he brought in so many independents and non-voters and Trump supporters and everybody else, because his issues were so deeply human and everybody could relate to it. So I hope that we have a movement that's less ideological than that, and that can be a bigger tent. But Tully, I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think that the original question, the more recent question, I don't have a great answer for, but the original question you had asked, I think, Matt, was like, what are some of the mistakes or sort of things that we can learn from?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be that. Just any, like, that's what comes to my mind when I think of like perhaps what other groups have done wrong. But if there's others that come to your mind, feel free.
Well, I think just in general, with the progressive left in the United States right now, and this is something, a little spoiler from the math class curriculum. One of the things that we talk about in the curriculum is the essential importance, and this is in the section on messaging. It's the importance of maintaining outward orientation. And what does that mean? That means you're orienting your communications towards people who are outside of your group. You're not just preaching to the choir.
Yep.
And in many cases, the messaging, it's really terrible. Like an example of this is like ACAB, all cops are bastards. First of all, I'm not sure what that accomplishes. Okay, I've been told that it's like healing, but second of all, like your goal and what you need in order to create like sweeping changes, you need majorities, and the people who already agree with you. So you need to connect to people who don't already agree with you, who don't already see things the same world. And for that, you have to have messaging that appeals to their values, their way of seeing the world. And that's something at the grassroots level that we really can afford to work on and improve on in order to grow a movement that feels more welcoming, that more people can get involved in.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of really great material in the class, and Nell wants to know is it going to be available in multiple languages? And I know Mr. Tully,
He's a linguist there. Come on.
speaks Chinese. And Sue, if you are willing, Tully.
Yeah, we will have the website accessible in multiple languages. Math class is going to be a roughly 2-hour curriculum. I could see us putting together
2 hours of math class.
What's up?
2 hours of math class, man.
It'll be broken up.
Yeah, I know it seems
Oh, phew.
It's
I'm
actually
just
really entertaining too.
being annoying.
Yeah.
It'll be broken up. I'll make sure of it. I'm a teacher. I'll make sure it's broken up.
Tully, you got to give us some Chinese though for Sue. I mean, she's been watching here since the beginning. She wants to hear
你好，
Chinese.
苏，你最近怎么样？好像他的名字不是中文的，他的名字好像是来自泰国的。So I don't know if she understood any of that, but
I understood a lot of it.
Dude, have you ever seen there's these guys on YouTube who go around like New York City and walk around like Chinatown and they're like whitest dudes ever, and but they speak perfect like Mandarin.
And they just freak everybody out every time.
Yeah. It's hilarious, and sometimes like they'll act like really stupid like Americans at first, and they translate what like employees and stuff in like these shops and restaurants are saying about them.
Oh, yeah,
it's really funny. And then they find out that they can speak Chinese or Mandarin or whatever, and it's like, oh, like it's like we didn't know that. Anyways, off topic.
I have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. I feel like we've kind of covered a lot. I want people to be able to check out your site. It's mathmovement.org, mathmvmt.org. And you guys are currently raising money for things like website hosting and graphics and all the rest that goes into it. I'm not the one that's building it, so I don't quite have the understanding of the cost structure. But I do know that donations would help you guys. So if you guys would like to donate, it's a 501c4, so you have an Act Blue, like FEC. It's all straight and narrow, from what I understand. And the links on that is in the website. Is there anything like before we kind of wrap this up that you want to talk about, or just get the message across about Math Movement, math class, your goals and visions, really anything?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, a lot of us here have donated to support candidates, right? And we see that as really important. And I would say this is just as important. Let's not forget the key role of organizations. And I think we're one of the first organizations that's springing up in this space. And we really need people's support, because the fact is that it's not free. It's not free to build a movement. And we want to be able to commit our time to this full time. What I can tell y'all is like Heidi mentioned earlier, we're a registered 501c4. We have representation on our board from Humanity Forward, as well as many members of the Yang Gang that y'all know, that I'm sure y'all know of. And like there's oversight, so we can't just spend like money irresponsibly. We're going, like, every penny there's going to be oversight, and we're going to work to use it as efficiently as possible. But the fact is, we really kind of need full-time staff, and you need to have at least a few staff who can be, fully accountable, working on the stuff day after day. So in the same way that y'all support candidates, we really need y'all to support and help make this organization a powerhouse, at least as influential as the Sunrise Movement. We're trying to do the work. We need your support. So I know it's a tough time, but if people can dig in to help spark things, especially early on, it will make a huge difference for us, and I think for our movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I think back to my campaign, I mean, in a lot of ways, I was one of the first kind of Yang Gang congressional candidates, and there wasn't anything that I could really plug into. I couldn't, connect with the math movement and be like, what help do I need? And do you have trained volunteers? And do you have an infrastructure set up for me? Like, I had to just create it all on my own and kind of just hope things were there. And there were some groups that helped me, but they were just getting started too. A lot of the groups that are around, that are great, like Distributed Forward, shout out to them. They were just getting started too. And we didn't have that set up yet. And I can't even imagine the power of being able to plug into something like this. And we hope to be able to offer things to candidates for free, because that's the main barrier, is money. We hope to be able to offer as much as we can to candidates on a completely free basis. It won't be free for us. We'll have a cost. So that's how we're going to fund things, is through your support, through the support of our nonprofit. We can fund these candidates. So it's just as important, as Tully said, as donating to a candidate, because that candidate needs that infrastructure, and they can actually save money if we have a grassroots organization built that can support them. They might not need to raise as much money and have 10 times the effect. If you look at the people that beat incumbents, they do not always outraise them. In fact, they rarely do. But they're very organized. They have a full infrastructure backing them up, and they kill it because they have that ready to go. And that's what we want to build. So you are supporting candidates if you support our movement, because we will support them for free and help them to be able to do more with their money.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I just want you all to think of us as a force multiplier for like all the candidates around the country. We can increase the chances that they're going to win. For all the work and the initiatives that Humanity Forward is working on, we can sort of complement a lot of the work that they do and multiply the effect that it has by giving them that extra bit of capacity on the outside. So there's many ways in which we can sort of boost the chances of success for our movement, but it takes resources.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what's to come from the math movement. I'm really looking forward to taking math class for the first time ever in my life.
Oh yeah.
Wow. No, just kidding. No, I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, putting into this. I imagine it's a lot, and coming on to the channel and sharing it with our viewers, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Just a 30-second plug. For our fundraiser, we'd love it if you donated a prime number, just to symbolize that we're indivisible. All right, we had to. We're the math movement. So when you go to the Act Blue link, the options are not going to look like they usually look. They're actually all prime numbers. So if you donate, we'd especially love a prime number.
All right, prime number. If you can't do a prime number, they'll accept it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I hope everybody has a good night. Make sure you like the video, and we'll see